Okay, so today we're going to break down a pretty provocative argument, one that comes from a video titled The Conquistadors Were Right. Now, our goal here isn't to debate the history itself, but to really unpack the structure of the argument, to understand how it makes its case. Right off the bat, the source video throws down this gauntlet. It's a direct challenge to what it calls the standard narrative we all learn. It's not just saying that story is incorrect, but that it's a deliberate lie. And this is the core thesis, the big idea driving the entire video. The argument isn't trying to just, soften the image of the conquistadors. No, it's trying to completely reframe their actions as a moral, even necessary, intervention against what it calls a demonic empire. This is the lens for everything that follows. All right, so how do they even begin to build a case like that? Well, it all starts by totally reframing the very idea of the conquest itself. First up, the argument goes right after the stolen land narrative. It does this by reframing history as just one long, continuous story of conquest. They point out that empires like the Aztecs were themselves conquerors who took land and subjugated other people. So from this perspective, conquest isn't some uniquely European crime. It's just a human universal. And this right here is a really crucial pivot. By framing conquest as a historical constant, the source basically shifts the moral goalposts. The question, it argues, isn't if it happened, but whether what came after was better or worse than what came before. To make that comparison, the video then paints this incredibly stark picture of Aztec religion. It's portrayed as a system built on systematic murder, all in service to what the source calls demons they call gods. And it details these really graphic practices, like widespread child sacrifice, ritual cannibalism, and even priests wearing the flayed skin of victims. To try and illustrate the sheer scale of this, the source puts a number on it, 20,000. That's the estimated number of people it claims were sacrificed over a single 4-day period just before the Spanish arrived. The video even adds the detail that priests had to work in shifts because their arms were getting tired. The argument then points to modern archaeology to back this up. It brings up the discovery of the Great Skull Rack, or Huitzilopochtli, in the Aztec capital, claiming that it held the skulls of more than 130,000 sacrificed men, women, and children. Now, this all leads to one of the source's most surprising points. The argument is that the conquest wasn't really Spanish at all. Instead, it's framed as a massive indigenous rebellion, where about 200,000 native allies basically used a few hundred conquistadors as leverage to help them overthrow an empire they already hated. So the video then poses the question, if this was the reality, why is the common narrative we hear so different? The video's answer has to do with a specific philosophical idea. And that idea is the noble savage. The video defines this as a concept from Enlightenment thinkers, this image of primitive man being inherently good and pure before being corrupted by civilization. According to the argument, this was never a historical reality. It was always just a philosophical tool. The source then lays out this timeline to show how it believes history got rewritten. It argues that for centuries, the record was clear. Then, in the 1700s, philosophers like Rousseau invented the noble savage idea as a way to critique their own society back in Europe. And now the argument goes, that philosophical concept is taught in our textbooks as if it were historical fact. This quote from the video really states the conclusion bluntly. The source claims the whole idea of the noble savage was never about getting history right. It was a political tool, a kind of propaganda meant to undermine Western confidence and make people ashamed of their own heritage. And that brings us to the final part of the argument. This isn't just left as a historical debate. The video connects it all directly to the present day, with a very clear call to action. This is where the whole thing pivots. It moves from a historical analysis to what the source calls a modern spiritual battle. It frames that noble savage narrative as a weapon being used today in a cultural conflict over Western and Christian identity. So what's the response supposed to be? Well, the video gives a direct 4-step call to action to its audience. 1. Know this revised history. 2. Stop apologizing for your faith. 3. Embrace the idea that Christianity built Western civilization. And 4. Be ready to stand against evil, drawing a direct parallel between the conquistadors and people today. And the source leaves its viewers with this final thought, directly linking historical knowledge to the will to act. The core message is that having the correct understanding of the past is absolutely essential if you want to defend your heritage in the present. So, regardless of where you stand on all the historical claims, the argument itself raises a much bigger question for all of us. It really forces you to think about the power of historical narratives, not just to explain what happened in the past, but to define who we are today and motivate our actions right now.